Joel Varner trusted two things: his instincts, which 11 years in Army Special Forces had sharpened down to something close to a sixth sense, and Ranger, a 75-pound Belgian Malinois, who had never once in his working life allowed a stranger within arm's reach of his handler without making them bleed for the attempt. So when the small, unremarkable physical therapist his brother had hired walked into the master bedroom of the Wyoming ranch on a gray Tuesday afternoon, Joel braced for the usual theater: the sharp intake of breath, the slow, sideways shuffle toward the door, the inevitable resignation letter phoned in by the agency the following morning. Ranger rose from the foot of the adjustable hospital bed, his scarred spine bristling, a sound building in his chest that wasn't quite a growl. It was something lower and more deliberate than that. A promise. The therapist didn't stop walking. Her name, according to the file Joel's brother Archer had slid across the kitchen table 2 days earlier, was Cassidy Rhone, 32 years old. Petite, maybe 5'4" in boots. Dark hair pulled back in a knot so tight it looked punitive. The kind of face that disappeared in a crowd without trying. Her file said she had a decade of experience in trauma rehabilitation and had worked specifically with combat veterans recovering from spinal and orthopedic injuries. It said she was thorough, professional, and highly recommended by 3 separate physicians. What it did not say, what no file ever said about the thing that mattered most, was why Ranger stopped. Not backed away, not retreated, stopped. The Malinois stood his ground for exactly 3 seconds, every muscle locked, teeth half bared. Cassidy Rhone kept her eyes on Joel, her expression doing nothing in particular. She didn't reach for the dog. She didn't coo or make sounds meant to soothe him. She simply moved through the space he occupied as if she had already calculated exactly how much room she needed. And Ranger, a dog who had put 2 men in the emergency room at Fort Bragg and once cornered a visiting general against the wall of a motor pool, stepped aside. He didn't like it. He made that clear. He circled back to the foot of the bed and watched her with the focused, unblinking attention of a predator trying to classify something that didn't fit any category he knew. Joel understood the feeling completely. He said nothing that first afternoon. Just watched her work, checking his vitals, adjusting the elevation of the bed, reviewing the physical therapy protocol the VA had sent over in a folder 3 inches thick. She was efficient in the way that felt trained rather than learned. No wasted movement. No chatty filler to fill the silence. When she left at 6 in the evening, she said, "I'll be back Thursday. Sleep on your right side if the nerve pain spikes." That was all. 6 months earlier, Joel's 12-man Special Forces detachment had inserted into the jungle outside Medellin on a mission that intelligence had assessed as low risk. They were targeting a logistic coordinator for a Colombian trafficking network, a man who moved product, not soldiers, and who was expected to have minimal armed protection. The intelligence had been wrong in every meaningful way. The compound was not lightly guarded. The network knew they were coming. They knew the insertion point, the approach vector, the radio frequencies, and the name of Joel's team leader. What should have been a clean extraction turned into a 40-minute firefight that left 3 of Joel's men dead, and Joel himself medevaced out of a Colombian jungle with a shattered pelvis, L4 vertebral fracture, and a traumatic brain injury that still, 6 months later, made the shadows move wrong in low light. He had survived because Ranger pulled him 200 meters through the undergrowth, while Joel was barely conscious enough to grip the dog's harness. Archer, younger brother, civil engineer, the kind of steadily ordinary person Joel had spent his career being glad existed somewhere safe, had flown out to Walter Reed the day Joel was transferred there. He'd arranged the Wyoming ranch, the private medical agency, the PT program. He had been thorough about it, methodical the way only someone who has watched their brother nearly bleed to death in a video call can be. Joel had let him because he didn't have the energy to argue, and because the alternative was a VA recovery program in a facility outside Denver that smelled like industrial floor cleaner and managed despair. The ranch was quiet. That was the primary thing Joel needed, and for the first 2 weeks of Cassidy Rhone's visits, it remained so. She came Tuesdays and Thursdays, sometimes Saturdays if the protocol called for it. She arrived on time. She left on time. She did not ask about the mission. She did not ask about the men who had died. She did not make the particular face, the soft, slightly tilted expression people assembled when they wanted to signal that they understood things they couldn't possibly understand, that Joel had learned to recognize as the thing he found most exhausting about the world outside military service. What she did instead was make him deeply uneasy in a way he couldn't immediately name. Joel had spent over a decade studying how people moved through space. Civilians moved differently than operators. Civilians looked at their phones in the car. They bumped into furniture in unfamiliar rooms. They startled the way you'd look around a grocery store. They scanned a room the way you'd look around a grocery store, casually, interested in what was available, not assessing where the exits were or what angle the windows offered. Cassidy Rhone did not move like a civilian. She never sat with her back to a door. When a truck backfired on the access road one Thursday afternoon and Joel's hand moved involuntarily toward the table drawer where he kept the Glock, Cassidy's eyes went to the window first. The most likely point of origin for a threat on that side of the house before they went to him. She didn't comment on it. She picked up where she'd left off in the PT session as if nothing had happened. But Joel had seen the sequence of her attention, and it was not the sequence of a woman who had learned the world from therapy school and continuing education credits. He tried to reason it away, tried to attribute it to some quirk of personality, some past experience that had made her quietly vigilant in ways that mimicked training without actually being training. He was on heavy pain management. He knew that. He knew what sustained opioid use did to a brain already stressed by trauma, how it lit up pattern recognition in ways that weren't always reliable. He tried. Then came the night of the blizzard, and the trying stopped. It was the first week of February. The storm had been building for 2 days, the kind of Wyoming winter event that the Weather Service classified with the particular bureaucratic understatement of significant accumulation, meaning the roads would be closed, the power would be intermittent, and anyone in an isolated property on an unpaved access road would be staying exactly where they were until it passed. Cassidy had offered to leave before the worst of it hit. Joel had told her to stay. He had not examined too carefully why. He was lying in the dark at 2 a.m, faking sleep the way operators learn to fake it. Breathing slowed, body loose, brain running at full capacity behind closed eyes. When the pine tree on the north side of the property finally gave up its argument with the wind and came down, it hit the reinforced side window of the bedroom with a sound like a rifle shot. Ranger exploded off the foot of the bed. The Malinois hit the floor with both paws and threw himself at the window, barking in the full-throated, deafening way that meant combat arousal rather than warning. His claws raked the hardwood. Foam flew from his lips. 75 pounds of muscle and teeth, every circuit in his nervous system, scream-swing threat, pointed at the dark glass. Joel was already reaching under the pillow for the compact Glock he slept with his hand resting on. His spine fired pain signals. His adrenaline was mostly suppressing. He got one hand around the grip and pulled it clear. The bedroom door opened. Cassidy came in with a flashlight. The beam swept across the floor and caught Ranger mid-stride as the dog wheeled from the window toward the new figure in the doorway. What happened next took less than 2 seconds. Ranger committed. All of it. Every kilo, every instinct. The full authority of a trained military working dog in a state of complete combat arousal. He launched from the floor directly at Cassidy's center jaws open, fully committed to a takedown that would have broken bone. Joel opened his mouth to scream the abort command. He didn't get there in time. Cassidy killed the flashlight. In the same motion, her right hand dropped to her side with a sharpness that had nothing soft in it. Her palm flattened, angled down, 2 fingers extended and spread wide. Then her wrist rotated inward, 1 precise quarter turn, and stopped. Ranger's claws tore 4 parallel gouges in the hardwood as he braked. He stopped with his nose 4 inches from Cassidy's knee. The barking choked off as if someone had thrown a switch. He dropped. Not lay down, dropped, belly to the floor, ears pinned, head lowered, and let out a single high, thin whine of complete submission. He didn't move after that. He just watched her hand. Joel lay completely still, his breathing controlled by sheer discipline, the Glock tight in his grip under the sheet. He knew that signal. Not from an internet video, not from civilian K-9 training courses. He knew it the way he knew it because he had watched it used once, in a dark hallway in Kabul by a special mission unit handler during a hostage rescue operation where a single bark from a working dog would have told 3 armed men exactly which door to cover. A flat palm, 2 fingers spread, quarter turn inward, the abort signal used by Ranger Regiment handlers during close quarters operations. The kind of signal that never appeared in any publicly available training manual. The kind of signal you learned by standing in a room where it was used, not by reading about it. Cassidy exhaled once, barely audible. Then her shoulders dropped, a controlled, deliberate lowering, and the quality of the air around her changed. The flatness in her posture softened by a degree. She clicked the flashlight back on, directed it at the floor, and stepped around Ranger the way you step around a sleeping dog you've known for years. "Just the tree coming down," she said quietly, to the dog rather than to Joel. "Easy." She checked his IV monitor in the dark, pulled the blanket up 2 inches where it had slipped, and returned to the armchair in the corner. Ranger crawled back to the foot of the bed. He did not take his eyes off her for the rest of the night. Joel stared at the ceilings until 4 a.m. with his mind running through everything at once, cold and fast and very clear. He waited until the daytime aide arrived at 7 to ask for his laptop. He waited another 40 minutes until the aide went to the kitchen to start breakfast, and Ranger was lying across the doorway watching the hall before he initiated the encrypted video call. Travis Ben had been an Army intelligence analyst for 9 years before a knee injury pulled him out of uniform and into private defense contracting work in Colorado Springs. He was one of 4 people Joel had given his encrypted contact information to in the event that something felt wrong in a way he couldn't immediately classify. Something felt wrong. "You look terrible," Travis said when his face appeared on screen. He was in his home office, the kind of controlled clutter that meant someone was actually using the space rather than staging it. "Is it the paint and meds or did something happen?" "Something happened," Joel said. "I need a full background on someone. Name is Cassidy Rhone. Physical therapist, placed through an agency called Meridian Rehab Specialists. My brother hired them." Travis frowned. "Joel, Archer went through every." "She's not a physical therapist, Travis." Joel kept his voice flat. "Last night, my K-9 went for her throat. She aborted him with the Ranger Regiment close quarters signal. Perfect execution. Dog dropped like he'd been switched off." Travis was quiet for 3 full seconds. "I'll call you back in an hour." Joel spent the hour going back over 6 weeks of Tuesday and Thursday visits and Saturday sessions, reviewing every detail with the kind of operational analysis he'd once applied to target packages. The way she positioned herself relative to the door each time she sat down. The way she'd cataloged the ranch layout in the first week without appearing to look at anything. The way she'd asked once, very casually, whether the utility room in the basement could be accessed from outside. He'd told her no. She'd accepted the answer without following up, but she had asked. Travis called back in 58 minutes. "Don't let her know you're running this," was the first thing he said. His voice had changed, the relaxed, slightly amused quality replaced with something careful and precise. "Cassidy Rhone's PT license is completely valid. Clean record. Good references, no flags. But the license was issued 26 months ago through an accelerated interstate transfer, and before that, nothing. No credit history before 30 months ago. No tax filings. No social footprint that goes back further than the license. The identity has a legend, Joel. A good one. SIA or something deeper. I ran facial biometrics through the military cross-reference databases I still have access to. Got a hit immediately, then got kicked out of the system. I could see it for maybe 4 seconds before the access terminated." Travis paused. "Partial badge insignia. CIA Special Activities Center. Ground branch." Joel's voice came out very quiet. Ground branch. Paramilitary operations. The people they use when they need someone who can hold a rifle and set a bone in the same afternoon. If she's in your house, she's not there to rehabilitate your L4 fracture. Joel thought about the injector she always carried in the outer pocket of her kit bag. He had noticed it before and filed it away as insulin or epinephrine for patient emergencies. He had told himself that. He had believed it because he had wanted to. I already told Miles about her, Joel said. The silence on the other end lasted long enough that Joel counted 4 seconds. Joel, when did you tell him? Last night, after the incident with the dog. He was my first call. He's my. Where did Miles tell you he was calling from? Denver. He said he was at a conference. Travis's exhale was sharp and controlled, the kind of sound someone makes when they are deciding very quickly how to say something they need the other person to hear clearly. Joel, I need you to listen. I started pulling threads on Cassidy Rhone's cover. At the same time, I ran her face. The system flagged her placement at your location as an active operation. I can't get into the details of the operation, but I can tell you that whoever placed her there did it through your brother's agency on purpose. And whoever she's there to protect you from, they've been receiving updates on your location, your condition, your security setup, and your PT schedule for the last 6 weeks. Joel said nothing. Miles Doran has not been in Denver, Joel. His cell has been pinging towers in Cheyenne for 22 days. The ranch, Cheyenne was 40 minutes from the ranch. He's not your friend, Travis said. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but he is not your friend. I'm looking at financial records I should not have access to, and I'm going to pretend I never saw them. But the short version is that Miles had a real estate development collapse 3 years ago that left him underwater by a significant amount. The Colombian network your team was targeting bought his debt. In exchange, he gave them the approach coordinates for the Medellin operation. He gave them the radio frequencies. He gave them your team's composition and timeline. He's been giving them everything since, and last night when you told him who Cassidy Rhone really is, you told him that his asset protection timeline just ran out. Joel set the Glock on the hospital table beside him. He picked it back up. They're coming here, he said. Sometime in the next 24 hours. Call her, Joel, right now. He ended the call. That evening, Cassidy arrived at the usual time and hung her coat by the door without comment. She checked his vitals, noted his blood pressure had spiked. She looked at him with a question in her eyes that she didn't ask out loud, and went to the kitchen to prepare his evening medications. Joel waited until she came back into the bedroom. Sit down, he said. She looked at him steadily. Then she set the medication tray on the table and sat in the armchair, and Joel told her everything. Travis's findings, the biometric hit, and the phone call he had made to Miles Doran the previous night before he had understood what Miles Doran was. Cassidy closed her eyes for a moment. It was the first time in 6 weeks Joel had seen her do anything that looked like a private response to unwelcome news. How long ago did you tell him? 20 hours. She stood. The physical therapist was completely gone. The person who stood up from the armchair moved differently, held differently, occupied the room with an authority that had nothing to do with scrubs and PT certification. Miles Doran is not in Denver, she said, reaching into the kit bag and removing the suppressed Glock 43X with the practiced efficiency of someone who had done it 10,000 times. She press-checked the chamber. He liquidated the last of his legitimate assets 11 days ago. He's been coordinating with the network's local contracted security since the day your brother signed the lease on this property. The night you called him and told him I was here, you burned a 6-week operation. You could have told me what you were. That's not how protective embeds work. There was no reproach in it. Just the facts, delivered straight. My mandate was to keep you alive long enough to testify about the compromised intelligence that got your team killed. That meant you couldn't know. The moment you knew, you'd have told someone, and there was no one in your circle I could fully clear except Archer. The injector, epinephrine and a coagulant compound. in case you took a round before I could get between you and it." She pulled the spare magazine from the kit bag and slid it into the pocket of her scrubs. "The safe house protocol is already built into the structure. Your brother didn't choose this ranch for the view." Joel looked around the room. At the heavy framed windows, the reinforced door, the utility room in the basement that had no exterior access, he had told her that, and she had accepted it because she already knew. "How many?" he asked. "The network uses 3-person strike teams for controlled location hits. Based on the timeline and Miles's position, I'd estimate arrival between now and midnight." Ranger lifted his head from the foot of the bed. The dog's ears pinned flat and forward simultaneously. The rumble that started in his chest was not a warning. It was the sound a working dog makes when it has already made a decision about what comes next and is simply waiting for confirmation. Cassidy's watch gave a single soft chirp. She looked at the face of it. The screen was red. Parameter sensors. Eastern tree line. She moved to the hallway without hurrying, pressed her hand flat against the wall beside the thermostat, and pulled a narrow braided cable that ran behind the drywall. Heavy steel shutters dropped over the bay windows with a sound like a vault ceiling. "We have about 4 minutes." Joel pushed himself off the bed. His pelvis screamed. He found the wall with one hand and the Glock with the other and got his weight onto his good leg. "Tell me the angles." "Bedroom window covers the back approach. The hallway is the kill funnel for anyone coming through the front." She looked at Ranger, who was already on his feet, head low, every hair standing. She gave him a hand signal, flat palm forward, sweeping right toward the kitchen, and the dog melted into the dark of the hallway without a sound. "Stay on the far side of the oak dresser. You'll have a line on the window and a partial angle down the hall. Don't move from it." "And you?" She was already at the hallway entrance. "I'll be wherever I need to be." The charge took the front door off its hinges at 11:47 p.m. The explosion shook dust from the ceiling and blew the overhead light, fitting into the wall. 2 men in dark tactical gear came through the opening in a fast stack, laser sights slicing the smoke. They cleared left and right by reflex and started pushing toward the bedroom. They made it 8 feet. Something dropped from the kitchen ceiling beams behind the second man. Cassidy had climbed the stone fireplace at some point Joel hadn't tracked, gone flat against the exposed beam overhead, and waited. She came down behind him with the silent efficiency of something that had been practicing this specific problem for a long time. One arm, one precise application of a blade into the gap between helmet and Kevlar collar, and the man folded without a sound. The first operative spun, but Ranger was already airborne from beneath the kitchen island. The Malinois hit the man chest high and took the forearm in his jaws with the bone-crushing authority of a dog who had spent 6 years being very good at exactly this. The operative screamed and went down. 2 shots from Cassidy's suppressed Glock, clean and clinical. "Ouse," she said. Ranger released and pressed his flank against her leg, panting, eyes bright. A third figure was coming around the back of the house. Joel heard the boots on the porch. Uneven rhythm, the hesitation of someone who had expected more noise inside and was recalibrating. He braced both arms on top of the oak dresser, centered his breathing the way he'd learned in a shoot house at Fort Campbell 12 years ago, and waited for the shape to appear in the damaged window glass. 3 rounds. The figure went backward off the porch, railing into the dark. "Joel." Cassidy's voice came from the hallway, controlled and clear. "Living room. We have 1 more." He moved. The pain was a fact he was storing for later. He came down the hallway with his back to the wall and turned the corner into the smoke-hazed living room. Miles Doran was on his knees in the center of the room. His right shoulder was dark with blood. His weapon was on the floor, 5 feet from his outstretched hand. He looked up when Joel came in, and his face did the thing Joel had seen faces do when a plan encounters a reality it couldn't have modeled. Cassidy stood behind him with the Glock leveled at the back of his head. Ranger paced a slow, tight circle around the kneeling man, that low, sustained sound running in his chest. "Joel." Miles's voice was wrecked. "Joel, listen to me. They had leverage. There were people." You gave them the insertion coordinates? Joel said. He heard his own voice as if from a slight distance. Flat. You gave them the radio frequencies. You gave them Garrett's name, and Sal's name, and DeSoto's name. It wasn't supposed to. 3 men, Joel said. 3 men who trusted you. Miles Doran closed his eyes. Cassidy didn't look at Joel. Her eyes stayed on Miles, and her voice came out at a temperature several degrees below the room. His immediate family entered federal protective custody 19 days ago. They're safe. They've been safe since before he made the call that burned your team. He didn't do this because he was afraid for them. She paused. He did it because he was afraid of losing the house in Scottsdale. Joel stood in the wreckage of the front entry of the ranch, where he had been sent to heal, with smoke still hanging in the air and 3 men he had never met dead in the rooms around him, and looked at the person he had trusted most steadily across 2 deployments and 4 years of shared service. He lowered the Glock. "He's yours," Joel said, and turned his back on Miles Doran for the last time. He heard the precise, economical sound of a pistol grip meeting a skull. One impact, exactly calibrated, the weight of a man losing consciousness and the floor receiving him. Then it was quiet. Cassidy spoke into her wrist, brief and specific, coordinating the cleanup crew that had been staged a mile down the access road. Medical evacuation for Joel, transport for the secured target. Her voice had already taken on the clean operational cadence of someone filing a report into a recorder. When she finished, she turned. Joel was leaning against the door frame between the hallway and the living room, his good leg taking most of his weight, the Glock loose in his hand. Ranger had crossed the room at some point and was sitting between them, looking at Joel with the clear, settled eyes of a dog who has completed the thing he was built to do and found the world, for this moment, in acceptable order. Cassidy walked toward him. She stopped 2 feet away and studied his face the way she had studied it every Tuesday and Thursday for 6 weeks, reading his pain levels, his fatigue, his capacity to bear what came next. "Can you walk to the kitchen?" she asked. "I can walk to the kitchen." "Then sit down. I'll look at the leg before the medics get here." She offered her hand. Not to help him, exactly. More in the way that 2 people who have been through something together reach for each other because the reaching itself is the thing that needs to happen, an acknowledgement. A settling of accounts. Joel looked at Ranger. The dog looked back at him with dark, steady eyes, tail moving once, not performing, just present. He took her hand. The storm outside was finally breaking. Through the gaps where the steel shutters didn't quite meet the window frames, Joel could see the faintest change in the quality of the dark. The specific lightening that meant it was almost over, that something resembling morning was on its way. He took a step toward the kitchen, then another, Ranger moving quietly beside them both.